Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of FGC Behind the Smoke. Today we have a special guest. We have Sheena Osborne on. Francesco just informed us that this is our 44th episode, so we're making progress. Sheena, really happy to have you on. We were just talking before we started recording, and we've been trying to get you on for a while, and then it's like something comes up on my end or on your end, and then we have to reschedule and stuff. So it's awesome that we finally were able to make this happen. We're really excited to have you on. I'll just run through the bio that you sent me here, and then
Sure, yeah.
and we'll have at her. So Sheena Osborne is an advanced care paramedic, educator, and founder of Red Point Performance and Safety Inc. For over 20 years, she has served the people of BC through both professional and volunteer roles. Today, Sheena focuses on helping first responder teams apply human factors, principles, and develop the mindset, skills, and behaviors to perform at their best when the stakes are highest. So, I told Sheena before coming in here that I had worked last night. I have a newborn baby at home. So hopefully I didn't butcher anything in there. But you left a lot out of your bio. And but luckily I know you, so I jotted some stuff down that we're gonna cover today. So everyone listening, you obviously know I constantly harp on how important training jiu-jitsu is for first responders. We've had Sean Albrecht on here, who is my coach and your coach as well,
Yeah.
right? So Sheena is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So she's been doing it for a long time, and we're gonna dive into that a bit too. But yeah, like I said, thank you very much for coming on. We actually have a gift for you, just one of our hats.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much.
So we just got these hats made. Yeah, we're giving them to our guests. So you're actually the first guest to get a hat.
All right, I feel super honored. That's pretty rad.
Make sure you wear it in front of Sean, okay?
I'm gonna have to.
And tell him he doesn't get one. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely will. 100%.
He'll beat us up. Right on. So you grew up in BC, right?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
I grew up in Maple Ridge.
Okay.
And yeah, spent like most of my time there until like high school, and then moved away, just into the Lower Mainland, like Coquitlam and Burnaby when I went to college. And
Nice.
yeah.
Awesome. Right on. Growing up, did you always want to be some sort of first responder? Was it always, you wanted to be a paramedic, or is that something that kind of happened like a bit later in life?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. Like early on, that's definitely what I wanted to do. Like I really liked medicine and like paramedic work, fire work, police work, and I wasn't really sure kind of which direction. But when I was pretty young, I got introduced to like St. John ambulance cadets, and as it created a really awesome opportunity for me to learn. And I started to kind of learn some medical skills like really early, and they foster a lot of like leadership training and things like that at a young age, which really kind of like funneled me towards really liking medicine. And I just got like super interested in that. It was the first thing that I really liked to learn about. And I would sit there and I'd be like, well, I want to know what a pneumothorax is. And I'd start to like read a little bit more and read more. And it was the first time I was really like motivated to learn that kind of stuff. So that was like a really awesome opportunity for me to be able to like start to develop some of these skills like pretty early in a really supportive way. And that kind of got me started in that trajectory. And then I kind of like fell away from it for a little bit. Actually, like went to business school
Okay.
outside of like after high school, and did work there as well. So yeah, I went to BCIT business school, and I worked in business for quite a few years after that, doing like project management, operations management, like lean consulting and that kind of stuff. So about as far away as you could get from medicine. And I kind of like lost my path on that for a little bit. And funny enough, I got asked to do some like occupational health and safety stuff as like a tiny fraction of one of my portfolios, as a manager. And I was like, oh, I should probably redo a first aid course. And then I was like hooked back into it again.
Nice.
And then I was like, I'm going to do this EMR thing. And then I got hired as a weekend warrior, as an EMR up in Lytton. And I was doing my office job Monday to Friday. And then on weekends, I'd go up to Lytton,
Wow.
to work on a pager. And started to do calls and got totally addicted to it. And it was interesting, like a lot of the things that applied to the business work that I've been doing were really applicable in managing some of the emergency scenes, like being a project manager and is basically like that's what a call is like a tiny little project. Like
Yeah.
leading and communicating and teamwork and all that stuff kind of fits in.
I was actually just going to ask you if some of the skills that you learned in the business world translated over to being a paramedic, and you just told us there. Like, and I think that's a thing that is probably, I'm assuming, is why you maybe started Red Point to begin with, right? Is because going into these first responder jobs, not everybody has those skills that they've developed beforehand, right? So that's awesome that you were able to do that. But so you were working Monday to Friday, and then you were going up to Lytton to respond to calls.
Yeah.
So you're just working nonstop.
I was going a little nuts, and I kind of hit a point where I was doing it too part-time to be able to like start to improve. And that really got under my skin. Like I knew that I wasn't building the skills that I needed. I felt like they were fading because the call volume is kind of lower.
Yeah.
And I started to kind of be like, well, I don't want to be half in. I'm not really a half in kind of person. So I was like, man, what do I need to do here? And so I decided to go do my PCP license, my primary care paramedic license, and leave my office job and do full-time paramedicine.
Nice.
And that was a pretty scary transition, a little bit different like financially in that, but it was so rewarding. And I'm super glad I never looked back.
Did you find it like an easy transition? Because you're going from, I mean, you were working 7 days a week already, right? But you were going from, the Monday to Friday, daytime hours, and then obviously, you're responding to calls in Lytton, but I'd imagine it wasn't super busy there.
No.
So then you transition over to, working shift work and nights and stuff like that. Did you find that challenging, or were you just okay with it?
No, it was definitely something that took me a lot of time to kind of like figure out and wrap my head around. Like there was a lot of like suffering and a lot of like gas station caffeine at terrible hours on like late night calls. But honestly, it took me a little bit, especially when I got full time. It took me quite a bit. I had to talk to a lot of like senior folks and be like, what is it that you do to flip your sleep cycle, or like how does this work? Because that was pretty foreign to me, and it definitely took some adjusting for sure.
Working the shift work, it can be tough. It can be really tough, right? Like you're tired. I find too, like if I've had a bad night at work, as a firefighter, we do sometimes get the opportunity to at least get a bit of a nap in. But if you don't, it's I find like probably about like 2 days before I feel better, right? Whereas for you, like you're working that 12-hour night shift, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And you're doing 2 in a row, and you're up the whole time. Like you guys are basically just going from call to call. Right? Like you guys are nonstop. So I'd imagine, that would have definitely taken a bit of an adjustment, right?
Definitely an adjustment. But like I felt like overall, like the opportunities I got at the job and the things that I've got to like learn and the people I've got to work with, like I would never look back. But it was a pretty scary like time, like kind of transitioning like into that. But
absolutely. Awesome. Absolutely. So we have some listeners who have reached out to us before for interview coaching for BC Ambulance, as well as in Alberta as well. Could we maybe just touch a little bit on like what the hiring process was for you because I know I don't know if Alberta's the same way, but I know in BC, and this might have changed, so please let me know if my information's wrong. But I know like, so how you said you were starting as an EMR, working up in Lytton, and for those listening, Lytton's about 3 hours. 3 hours from the lower mainland. So, you could imagine like Sheena was working Monday to Friday, and then Friday after work, driving 3 hours
up there.
And, so, I mean, but I've heard people say that that's kind of how you had to start back in the day. I don't know if it's the same, but
I can't speak to what it is like today, but when I got hired, like I think like 15, 16 years ago or so, you had to kind of start rural, with like a pager pay kind of thing, and work a fair amount of time building seniority in that seniority based system before you could apply to a full-time posting, which in those days was like the only place was urban centers for full-time work.
Okay.
So, like if you wanted anywhere in the lower mainland, you would have to go do a stint rural, and eventually get the seniority to come back. So like when I kind of went through, things are pretty different now, but when I went through, I did like 2 years in Lytton, and then I did 4.5 in Merritt part-time before I was able to get enough seniority to come to the city. And nowadays, like we have people that get hired right into full-time spots. We have full-time availability in like different communities. So yeah, there's
Okay.
definitely like a lot has changed. There's a lot more opportunities for work for sure.
So when you say when you first started, it was part-time, was it like on call or was it like you just gave them your availability and they kind of scheduled you in wherever they needed you or?
So yeah, basically you would put in a minimum number of shifts a month, and they would take your schedule and put in like a fair allotment based on what everybody else has put in and seniority and all that kind of stuff. And then they would put out a monthly schedule, and then so your responsibility would be, uh, to go up there for your shift and be available on a pager for the days that you're scheduled, depending on the type of station you are scheduled at. So it's a little bit different now.
Okay.
There's a lot less of the pager kind of thing as well.
So, and you said you did 2 years in Lytton and then you did 4 years in Merritt?
Yeah, yeah, like
Okay.
4.5 up in Merritt.
And so you'd have to just travel back and forth or did you move up there?
No, I was traveling back and forth. Most of us did that, like travel back and forth thing. Like we
Yeah.
do have like locals that work in those stations and stuff. And I think nowadays people are a lot better at being able to get into spots that are closer to home, like where they live and that. So yeah.
That's good because I mean, being a paramedic, I'm obviously not a paramedic, but we work together all the time, right? And it's a tough job in a lot of ways. And I mean, if I feel like they would have a hard time like recruiting people if people had to do what you had to do, right? So now if it's a bit more readily available for people to kind of select where they want to go full time, I'd imagine recruiting would numbers would probably come up a bit, right?
Yeah, definitely. And again, like I'm not super sure all of the ins and outs of the process these days, but I do know that there's a lot more paramedic jobs available really across the country. So it's pretty good time to be a paramedic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you got your PCP. So do you have to do that before you can get your advanced care?
Yeah, so you have to, like it's sequential. So to be a PCP, you have to have done your EMR, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and there's some prerequisites that you kind of need to do as well. Nowadays, you need to do like a health sciences diploma, and then you do an advanced diploma, which is your advanced care paramedic.
Okay. How long does it take to get your ACP?
Uh, Now it's the time to train your EMR, your PCP, and then you need to do your prerequisites, which would be that 2-year health sciences diploma, and then ACP is another 2-year program.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's really, I mean, obviously it's very in depth. Like it's going from PCP to ACP. I mean, we basically, if you don't mind, can you just maybe talk about the differences, like as far as like calls that you'd respond to?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's just sort of as you go up in license level, the scope changes. And so the number of like skills, interventions, medications change. But really, that's not the core of what we do. A lot of it is the background knowledge that we're going more in depth in anatomy and physiology, more in depth in understanding pharmacology, more in depth in clinical decision making and leadership and communication. There's a lot of the things that an ACP brings to the table is that like critical thinking, their judgment, their leadership, and so we have the privilege of being able to come in to what's considered kind of like the top tier of calls, like the sicker patients in the queue, and we get dispatched along with a primary care paramedic ambulance and often a fire truck as well, a fire team as well, and we we kind of take charge of the clinical leadership of those calls. And so we'll kind of do an assessment and make a decision on how this patient's going to be cared for, what kinds of interventions. We'll sort of differentiate what we think they're presenting with, and come up with like a treatment strategy from there.
Awesome. Well, what would you say was your motivation behind upgrading to advanced care?
Um, I don't really do anything like part way, and I love to learn. I love to learn no matter what it is, and I always like to push myself. And so, it's just it was a more formal way to be able to uh, learn more about medicine and develop my practice. And for me, I'm super happy that I jumped in with both feet and went in. It was really challenging, and it pushed me in lots of good ways, but I'm super happy that I did it.
Yeah, awesome. I love hearing that. Like, it's just you're one of those people who you're not okay with just the standard. You want to continue to grow and evolve, and I think that's a really amazing quality, and I think that also motivates others to do the same too, you know. So that's awesome. That's really good. Um, so jujitsu.
Yeah.
You're a black belt. How long have you been training?
20 years now.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've kicked my ass a few times in the gym, so. Mm,
But yeah, no, it's been pretty awesome. Jiu-jitsu's like changed a lot. It's grown a lot.
yeah.
No, it's
I'd
been pretty
imagine
cool.
20 years ago it definitely wasn't as popular.
It was definitely not as popular. There was only like a couple of gyms, and most people were training under like color belts when I started. Like people that would start gyms would have like a purple belt or a blue belt, or maybe a brown belt, and that. So there wasn't a lot of uh, uh, jujitsu in the Lower Mainland and in
Yeah.
BC. So it was like definitely a different place and time. And how we trained was a little bit different. It was a little bit rougher, a little
Yeah.
bit. People were going pretty hard. There wasn't we weren't sparring for longevity in those
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's changed a lot for sure. I feel like it's also just become like so much more sophisticated, right?
Oh my
Like
goodness.
it's crazy. And like you said earlier about like always wanting to learn new things. In jiu-jitsu, you will constantly learn new things. No matter how good you are, there's always something more that you can learn and be better at, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about like the sports that I do and the career that I've chosen, like, is exactly that. Is like there is no upper limit to how you can push yourself. And I just find that super motivating. Like,
Yeah.
I used to be like a competitive climber, and there's no upper limit to that. You can always push yourself harder to be better. There's always harder climbs. Jiu-jitsu, there's always more techniques. There's always tougher opponents. There's always like more strength training, mobility, tactics, all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And same with medicine. Like, you can study for as long as you want, and it'll still only be like a drop of water in the ocean of what there is to know.
Yeah.
And I think that's like very humbling, but it's also like super motivating because you can learn every day and always have something to run towards.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So you were a competitive climber?
yeah, I used to
How'd you get into that?
when I was a kid, I went I think on like a school trip and to the local gym, and I started climbing when I was like I think 8 or 9, and yeah, I started like competing and coaching, and I eventually made the Canadian national climbing team,
Wow.
and I got to compete with that team for a couple of years. I got the privilege of doing like a World Cup out in Vail,
No way.
which was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
You're
so
badass. You've done a lot of cool shit.
well,
That's awesome.
yeah, so it was really amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing opportunity. Very different back then again, like
Yeah.
now, like we had no idea what we were doing. I was coaching myself and we were just kind of like making our own way and doing all this stuff. But nowadays it's so sophisticated and they're climbing so much harder, and they have, that's amazing. It's amazing what they're doing nowadays.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's actually like I've seen videos of people climbing like the chief and stuff like that. I'm like, that's scary. Like it's pretty wild. But back to jiu-jitsu. So
Yeah.
what, like, how did you get involved in,
This is
especially like 20 years ago? Like,
this is like the sketchiest story. I typically am a really good decision maker, I would say. Like I make safe decisions. I like to err on the side of caution with my clinical decision making, my decision making in life, and I would say that for whatever reason in jiu-jitsu, my judgment lapsed pretty badly. I was like 18 and I was walking, through this like strip mall one day, and through this big glass bay window, I saw some guys sparring and just like beating the snot out of each other. I was like, what? One of them was Sean.
of course,
And
yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? Because I had done traditional martial arts as like a kid and a teenager, and that because that's really all there was.
Yeah, like karate and stuff like that, or
I did like everyone's gonna roll their eyes, but I did Aikido, and my mom did karate, so I learned some of that, and my brother did some judo, so I learned some of that, and I loved it, and I thought I knew a little bit about like defending myself, and so I sat there watching through this from the outside through this bay window, and this guy, opens the door and goes, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Don." And, he's like, "Oh, have you ever done martial arts before?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did, 5 years of Aikido and this and that." And he was like, "Oh," and he looks at me and goes, "That's a nice art." And I was like, and the way he said it, I was just like, what does this guy mean? And he was like, "Oh, would you like to try?" And so I literally just walked in, with this stranger right then and there, and went and sparred because I don't even know what I was supposed to be going to do that day, but I just walked past the strip mall, watched for a bit. This guy comes out that I've never met, and is like, "Hey, do you want to come try it?" And so I went and I did my first slap bump, and he was like, "I'll go easy." And then suddenly I'm tied up in a pretzel, and I'm thinking like, man, nothing that I knew like did anything against this guy. And I was like, I'm gonna try that again. That was a lucky go. And so we tried again, and again and again and again and again, and it always ended up the same, just me pinned and stuck or submitted or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn how to do that and not feel like this anymore.
So you were hooked right away.
Right away.
That's awesome.
I never looked back, and I signed up right then and there, and
you've ever since.
Yeah.
No gaps in the training, and
I've had some gaps from like injuries and stuff.
Yeah, but you never like quit for 2 years and.
No, I didn't like quit, but I did have some long like 8, 9 kind of month absences, but they were all tied around like injuries and things like that, whether it was from climbing or from jiu-jitsu. But yeah.
Do you still climb?
Very recreationally, but I like destroyed my shoulders. So
oh no.
I retired a long time ago. I had a big gap from that.
Yeah.
I'm finding my way back recreationally now, which has been pretty fun to get back into.
Nice. That's awesome. That's cool that you just like randomly just went there and you're like, yeah, I'll come in. Yeah. I'll come fight you.
This person I've never met who's like way bigger and fitter than me with these other, big fit dudes that have 100 pounds on me. And I was just like, like I said, I usually have err on the side of caution for judgment and all that. And I was just like, I'm just going to give this thing a go with random parking lot guy. I was like, oh my goodness.
Good for you though. I mean, that's so cool because so many other people would be so intimidated to do that. I mean, now jiu-jitsu is so mainstream, right? So like everyone, you see it everywhere, right? So I feel like it's a bit, it's still intimidating, I think. Like if you're brand new and you walk into the gym for the first time and there's a bunch of people with cauliflower ear and stuff but I mean, back then that would have been extremely intimidating to just do that. And you said you didn't care. You're like, I'm going in. I'm going to kick your ass.
I did it anyway. So I was like, I got to try this again. It must have been a fluke that this guy who runs this gym.
Yeah.
It was very eye-opening, very humbling. And I was just like, I got to figure out how to do this. Because what I thought was going to be able to help me out in a bad situation just went immediately out the window. So I was like, I got to learn whatever this thing is. And so I've been, trying to do that since then.
Unreal. That's awesome. Yeah. It's such a cool sport, and we'll get into like how it benefits, how it's, potentially benefited you as a first responder. But I know the couple times that you and I have sparred, I outweigh you by quite a bit. And every time I'm like, I'm in a bad situation here. So it's so cool. I've like I said earlier, I harp on it a lot. I think every first responder should be training jiu-jitsu. I bet like our listeners are sick of me saying this, but I think I say it probably every other episode we do. But if you're listening and you're not training, go train. Did you find that and I'm assuming that the answer is yes, but did you find that jiu-jitsu helped you a lot within your career as a paramedic?
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. Like both of my sports really helped me with like some of the like composure and stress management that is super important to being able to do the type of work we do. We get exposed to things that most humans should never see, and have to make decisions that people should never have to make, and a lot of that revolves around our ability to keep composed and manage stress and what our adversity tolerance is. And I think that both sports have like helped me really greatly. And, the mental skills side of it is a side that I've really leaned into. I'm never going to be the bigger or stronger one, despite how hard I try.
Yeah.
um, but I try to be the most technical and, have the mental skills and all of that. And jujitsu is one of those ways that you can really develop those mental skills because you get put in a situation that tests you and you're going to roll with people. Almost all of your roles are going to be with people who are better than you and stronger than you for a really long time. And just through that natural process, you get exposed to that kind of adversity, you will start to develop tolerance to it and learn how to manage it. And there's ways that we can learn techniques and skills and mindset to make that faster. Um, but it's so huge, and not only does it help you with like your overall resilience, but also like your recoveries and things like that as a first responder. The long-term stress management, chronic stress management, and resilience that it gives you is so huge. It's a huge physical outlet, and it's moving mindfulness. Like if I'm rolling with
Yeah.
you, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing next Tuesday. I'm not thinking about how I messed up that last call or whatever it is, or the bad case that I had. I'm thinking about not getting choked, or I'm thinking about getting the pass, or I'm thinking about whatever it is. And so by doing that, like being present in that moment, I'm being mindful. And
Yeah.
that's a huge part of resilience. And not only that, like it's good for your mind, it's good for your body. And another piece of jujitsu that people don't realize is like there's connection, which is like, you're connecting with a whole bunch of different people from different walks of life, but we all join up to do this crazy weird thing
Yeah.
where we spar each other, wearing pajamas, and it's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
funny.
Yeah. That,
Yeah, but it's like that's like three of the pillars of resilience, three of the four pillars of resilience. It's like mind, body, and connection.
yeah.
So that's huge.
It is it's so true when you say like you're practicing mindfulness when you're doing jiu-jitsu because like you said, like you can't think of anything else that's going on. You need to be so present and in the moment, and it's so good for your mental health. Like you said, like you as first responders, we deal with things that nobody should see. We make decisions that nobody should have to, and anyone who says that doesn't weigh on them in some way, I would say is being untruthful,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And it's almost like I guess kind of like a form of meditation in a way,
Yeah,
right? When you say
absolutely.
mindfulness, like it's, I'm not somebody who can just like sit there and meditate, but when I go to jiu-jitsu and I roll for an hour, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I was actually in a sense meditating because I was just focusing on this one thing,
Yeah, you're
right?
present exactly where you were, not where you were before, not where you're going to be. You're present exactly where you are.
Yeah.
And that's what mindfulness is.
Yeah, exactly. Did you compete at all or?
I competed a little bit when I was newer. There weren't any like women that trained back then, or there was like maybe one or two. And so most of the time I would like roll in the lowest guys weight category, which was usually kind of like 20, 30 pounds still above me.
Yeah.
When I started. So yeah, I got to test my skills there, and super fun, super good learning experience, but definitely really, really challenging.
Yeah, I would think so. But I mean, testing those abilities out against somebody who's like 30 pounds heavier than you.
Yeah.
And again, right, it goes to say about the type of person that you are, that you seem to really enjoy a challenge, right? I don't know too many people who would want to go and roll against someone in a tournament who's like 30 pounds heavier than them. So that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
unreal. Um, yeah, I've been training for jiu-jitsu, I don't know, maybe like 5 years or something. But prior to that, I was training mixed martial arts and stuff. And it's another thing that I found with it is and it probably goes hand in hand with, the stress management stuff, but I found it gave me a lot of confidence as
Yeah.
well, and just like my decision making abilities, and um, like you said, like just remaining calm in stressful situations. Um, Being able to do that just builds a lot of confidence within someone,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big part of being a first responder is you need to have the confidence within your judgment calls, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like so huge, and that composure and that stress management, uh, looking at it from like a jujitsu standpoint, like when you're really new, you're entering into fight or flight involuntarily. You know, uh, your brain doesn't know that you're not fighting this person for real. When
Yeah.
you're really starting, like that's like what people say, oh, white belt spaz out. What
Yeah.
that spaz out is an involuntary fight or flight response.
Right.
And that like stress response where, they have, excessive muscle tension and they're moving really quickly and they're doing things without thinking, like that's a fight or flight response. And you eventually learn how to chill that out and how to be present in the moment and relax and make decisions under pressure and persevere when it's really tough. And that's part of that adversity tolerance that jiu-jitsu builds, for
Yeah.
sure. But like as a first responder, like this is one of the skills that we really teach at Red Point, and I put a lot of time into acute stress management with the agencies that I work with, because that's one of the key performance drivers that it will either make or break you. One of the things we talk about at Red Point is like we're thinking about how stress relates to performance. Well, basically, your performance is equivalent to your training minus your unmitigated stress. So performance equals training minus stress. So like you can train all you want, but if you've never tested it under stress or you don't have the ability to calm yourself down when that reaction starts to come up, you're not going to be able to be successful. Your decision making will shift. Your situational awareness changes. You get tunnel vision. You get task fixated. We stop communicating. We lose the ability to access our higher level cognition. And so all of the things that make us good first responders start to shut down and turn off. And so by ignoring that, we're ignoring a huge part of our practice. So a lot of folks are like practicing like their technical skills training. Hey, I'm going to like work with this tool that, we just got in our department. And that's excellent. We need to do that. But you also need to train like the performance drivers, which is like stress and fatigue
Hmm.
management, right? If you're stressed out, you can't make good choices. It's not possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. And like when I first became a firefighter, and like, that first call that you go on and you just get that huge adrenaline spike and you're like, "Oh God," like it's one of those things where I think over time you learn to deal with, but if you're not if you're not making the like the mindful decisions to like ensure that you're practicing that mindfulness, or learning at least some of these things that you're teaching at Red Point, which we're going to get into here, um eventually it's gonna catch up with you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I love that there's a ton of focus on resilience and long-term stress management. We have to have that and we have to keep driving in that domain. But this one area of stress management, like acute stress management in the moment, how do we adapt our behaviors and use skills to enhance our performance when it matters the most? That stuff is a learned skill. And a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, this person, Adamo just has good composure. He's just a chill guy. And it's like, no, you've learned that and developed that as a skill through your entire life. And that's something we can train people to do faster, to recognize faster. And we can give them really clear sets of skills that will help them in those moments. And I think it's a huge area of first responder work and emergency response that we've kind of neglected. And I really want to like help folks train in that, right? It's a learned skill. It like anything else, it's like, how did you get good at, you know, this particular firefighting skill? How did you get good at this particular medical skill? How did you get good at this skill in law enforcement? Because you spent a lot of time with it, you practiced it. We
Yeah.
identified those opportunities for improvement, and managing stress is exactly that. And one of the things that I think is a little bit of an impediment is there's this great facade in a lot of first responders that we all act like we didn't experience stress on calls. And I think because we don't talk about it, So we want to seem tough. We want to fit in with the team. We want to seem like we can handle our stuff. We kind of like hide that part of it. Man, like if you're not getting stressed on the high acuity calls or like experiencing that, like you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Like there's even the most seasoned practitioner, you put them under enough pressure, that demand, activates your sympathetic nervous system. It's not that a person's weak, or not good enough or not cut out for the job. It's their sympathetic nervous system is responding to a demand. And
Yeah.
even the best people will experience that. And we got to stop pretending like it's not.
Yeah, I feel like if you're someone who doesn't, or you say you don't, get affected by the stress and stuff, I'm like, you got to be a psycho, because
Yeah.
there's no way that you've gone through this career and been like, no, everything's good. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's
That's the
fine.
thing, right?
It's just not realistic. And I think in the first responder world, we're getting a lot better about being open about it
Yeah.
and kind of talking about these things more. But what I really like with what you're doing with Red Point Safety is not only, you can open up and talk about it as much as you want, and I think it's great, but you also need to develop skills to properly cope with it. And you teach a lot of stuff. Like I wrote down here, you have like Red Point Safety's risk assessment, right? And you're teaching like violence mitigation, scene hazard assessments and stuff like that. And there's a big gap, I think, within the first responder community, at least within firefighting and within the paramedicine, where we don't get taught this stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
we get taught our skills, how to fight fires, how to extricate patients out of vehicles. You guys get taught, what the contraindications are of certain drugs, how to transport patients, all this kind of stuff. But we don't get taught a lot of, or any, actually, we don't get taught any of the risk assessment stuff when it comes to dealing with patients who at times can be very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, there's just this gap there. And this is why I really wanted to have you on, was to talk about what you're doing. It's so important. And do you mind just maybe touching on like, I mean, you kind of covered like, I think like why you started Red Point, but like, can you just tell our listeners a bit more about it
Yeah,
and what you do?
absolutely. Yeah. Um, I started Red Point Performance and Safety kind of with the goal of helping get important skills to first responders that aren't really taught that much. And that's our whole mission, is to basically support the development of performance and safety driven like skill sets for our frontline responders, to help them do what they do better and safer, and to help build stronger teams and safer teams. And the main area of focus is like human factors, which is like non-technical skills is what I really focus on. So stress management, fatigue management, situational awareness, decision making, communication, teamwork, leadership. That's like really the big umbrella of what we do. And so we have courses that train those non-technical skills, and we also have a branch of like violence mitigation. Because both of those are areas that hugely affect our performance and safety. Um, but they're not trained, right? Like
Yeah.
you do all this, medical training and all these things, and we teach you what to do when a decision's made. We teach you how to give this medication, how to, splint this leg, how to, get this person out of this arrhythmia, or what have you. But we don't talk about like, how do humans make decisions? What is situational awareness, and like how do we actually gain it or lose it? Like how do we communicate? What is teamwork? Like what are the components and constituents of teamwork that need to be present? And so I talk about technical skills. They're the fabric of what we do. The rescue skills, the knowledge you have of the various apparatus you work with, all that. That's the fabric of what you do. But non-technical skills, they're the thread that pull it together.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't, have situational awareness when you're approaching a structure, or you lose situational awareness during a search, it's going to lead to not only just an error, but like a potentially like life-threatening event for teams. And
Yeah.
so it's not just like the technical skills. We also have to start looking at the in between the stuff, and how to make that work. And so that's like one faction that we teach. We have a program like Red Point NTS. It's like a 1-day non-technical skills training course where we work on all that stuff. And then the other branch is violence mitigation, which is a bunch of non-technical skills, right? But really what we're focusing on, how to keep responders safe and avoid violence in the first place, diffuse violence if we experience it, escape it if we can't diffuse it. And then we do have an element of it where, you know, if a situation does become physical, how to use leverage-based techniques to escape that situation so you can get back to safety. And our training looks at the entire spectrum of violence. Again, with the whole focus is, I don't teach you how to be what to do if you get in a car accident. I want to teach you how to avoid a car accident in the first place. And so tons of that is situational awareness, risk assessment when you're coming up to scene, thinking about things like what are the risks related to the location we're going to the behaviors we're seeing from this patient, and about the situation. Like, are there a lot of unknowns? Well, that's kind of a red flag. Or has there been a history of violence at this location before? Yeah, sure. And then as we get closer and closer to patient contact, like, we teach people what to look for, how to look for it, and then how to use strong communication skills and trauma-informed communication to be able to build a better rapport with patients to avoid it in the first place.
Yeah.
And then, like, also little simple things like just distance management, how to position yourself on scene, and when to increase that distance, or simple things like egress management. A lot of the times I'll see, let's say you have like a bedroom and the bed takes up most of it and it's kind of almost pushing it so there's like just one corridor to the side of the bed. Well, most of us show up with like 10 different kits,
Yeah.
and we funnel into this tiny little confined space, and then one poor person is, sacrificed to the most confined space down this corridor, and then we have a bunch of people, and then right behind us is a bunch of gear. So
Yeah.
if that person that's making contact with the patient, let's say the patient is confused and unintentionally is violent towards us, and that person who's attending needs to get out of that little corridor, they can't.
Yeah.
And so just like simple things like egress planning before you have to leave, putting your kits in a way that maintains that egress, having a team brief about different things like that so we can get out, or how to use your partner to stand if you have to be more vulnerable. And really what we've done in our Red Point violence mitigation program is, for a bunch of years, I've been doing a ton of review of all of the research that's out there on violence in the pre-hospital forum. So that's like, fire and EMS, how, like, actually looking at what's happening, where is it happening, why is it happening, who's doing it, and then building a program that answers those things. Not like an overly sterilized program where it's like, if the scene is unsafe, you leave. Well,
Yeah.
not all the time do I have that information. Or sometimes I make patient contact, I'm in a confined space. Let's say we're driving in the ambulance and the patient becomes violent. I might not be able to immediately like escape that. And so it's giving a realistic view based on what really happens in the work that we do. It's dynamic, it's uncontrolled. We're going into people's houses that we've never been in before with unknown numbers of folks, and people with various degrees of like injury or illness that might incline them towards violence, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's say someone gets a head injury. Well, sometimes head injuries get confused and combative. It's not an intentional attack towards first responder, but like, I can't just run away and leave that person if they
No.
become violent. That would be pretty negligent of me. And so it's acknowledging the real work that we do and giving people skill sets that help them be successful in those environments. Because not all risk means no. It's just, how do I look at that risk and figure out what's an acceptable level and what's an unacceptable level? What is like safe, cautious, or unsafe? Where I
Yeah.
have to, what is the line of when I leave? How do I mitigate some of the risks when I'm caring for a person that is agitated or possibly violent? And a lot of training, for example, we have patients that do get severely agitated or violent for a number of reasons that might need to be restrained. Well, a lot of training never covers how to do that, or
Yeah.
so really we're looking to do like a realistic, practical that's actionable, course for our first responders. It's not, watered down. It's not not addressing the challenging calls that we face is an evidence-based look that gives you actionable tools to be able to use in the field on your very next shift. That's what our violence mitigation programs are about. And everyone that's gone through the training has given us really good feedback on it. And I get folks like emailing, being like, hey, I was able to use this in this situation to diffuse somebody, and it never went anywhere. And that's like the best review I could ever get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's you touched on something there where um sometimes we don't know, right? Like we
yeah.
go into these situations and we don't know that there's a significant risk. We don't know that the patient's going to be violent. We sometimes go to calls with very, very little information.
Mhm.
An example of that, some firefighters at a local fire department here in BC went to a call of, I believe it was like foul odor, like it
Mhm.
smelled like
Mhm.
gasoline. And they go to this place, they knock on the door. Next thing you know, the door flies open. A guy with a machete comes out wielding a machete at
Mhm.
them. The team, two people went one way, two people went the other way, and now the two people that went down the hall have this guy chasing them with a machete, and they end up getting cornered. And they luckily were able to get out from like a fire escape. You know those ones
Yeah.
that are like
Oh, the
those
external
the external one.
spicy.
Yeah, and it's just like it's so unpredictable sometimes. Like that was such a routine call. Like
Yep.
just for you're going to a call for like an odor. Like I've been to I don't even know how many calls like that,
Yeah.
right? And then it went from being just a routine call to all of a sudden, holy shit, someone's trying to kill us. And it's just there's like I've been saying, like there's just this gap in like situational awareness and stuff like that that doesn't get taught.
Yes.
And it's so important that you're doing this. And I really want all first responders, like I hope that you're able to come into all departments and teach this, because there's just such a lack of training in this. And it's like you said, it's one of those aspects of the job where it can be very unpredictable and we just don't know what we're going to,
Yeah.
right? We don't have all the information and things can change so quickly. um and I mean, I obviously wasn't there on that call, but maybe with some of the training that you provide, there could have been different ways of maybe going about it or whatever, right? I'm not trying to everything's in hindsight, right? But so I'm not trying to critique what they did or
Yeah.
anything. I wasn't in that situation, but it's just such a scary situation to be in where um you're not trained in that.
Yeah.
You don't know how to react in that,
Yeah.
right?
One of the goals with the training is we kind of talk about like the timeline of violence. And when I was going through the research and different case studies, and if I'm like analyzing a case of violence that happened, one of the most common things I hear is the patient suddenly, and then XYZ, whatever, they grabbed me, punched me, threw something at me, whatever the case may be. And while there are instances of very sudden and unexpected violence, a lot of them are preceded with little bits of information that can be picked up earlier. And I'm certainly not here to say, well, we shouldn't be getting, we'll never get caught off guard or any of this stuff. We're going into people's houses at
Yeah.
random hours. It's not impossible to it's not possible to completely sterilize what we're
Yeah.
doing. But one of the things in our training is helping to expand that violence timeline and start our assessment from the point of dispatch. And so I've kind of gone through the location-based risk factors, even just about like an address or whether your department flags places that have a history of violence, or it's an area that's associated with higher degrees of violence. For example, like going to a hotel or a pub has a higher degree of violence,
Hmm.
and starting to assess these like location-based risk factors and situation-based risk factors. And then the third domain we look at in our risk assessment is behavioral-based risk factors. And by bringing together those three domains, um, based on if you find any risk factors, it immediately correlates with a change in behavior. So I see a lot of times in other training where people will teach a risk assessment, but they don't teach any sort of how to correlate that with any matching behavior. And so our risk assessment is really simple. It looks at 3 things: location, situation, and behavior. So let's say you're going to like and we give lists of evidence-based locations that have a relationship of higher degrees of violence towards first responders, and situational risk factors, and we go through all those as well. So anybody that's altered level of consciousness has a higher degree of violence associated with them. There, lots of hypoglycemic patients or postictal patients, they just had a seizure, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Higher degree of unintentional violence. Like a lot of times we're focused on intentional violence. This person wants to hurt a first responder, which exists, but there's tons of situations that carry higher degree of risk for just situationally, and being able to identify that and then change my behavior based on it. And then when I'm patient side, I'm looking for behavioral based risk factors, and we all show people videos of what anxiety and restlessness looks like, how to spot signs of like muscle tension, how to spot pre-incident cues that someone might immediately escalate. And we teach them that and show them that, and we work through scenarios where they pick that up real time, and then they apply skills based on the risk assessment. So it's just 3 domains of risk, and then you either assign one of 3 risk levels, and each of those risk levels is correlated with behavior. So it's like think about it like a traffic light. So R1 is a green light. Proceed. There's no risk factors identified in any of the 3 groups. R2, risk level 2, is caution. It's like a yellow light. Hey, there are risk factors. It might not be a good idea to proceed, but you might be able to proceed safely if you can mitigate some of those.
Right.
And so the things that we would do if there's elevated risk in that R2 category, we're staying on scene, but we're going to be cautious, is things like positioning, just standing a little bit further from the patient. So if something does change, then I can egress quickly. Standing in a position where I'm not at a lower position than the patient. A lot of people will kneel right in front of the patient to build rapport, and rapport is really important. We have to try and find better ways to make a better relationship with our patient, but I don't have to put myself in a vulnerable position to do that.
Yeah.
I can use body language and kind of like bending at the hip to bring myself lower down without putting myself in a vulnerable position where if this patient that I'm kneeling in front of doesn't want me there anymore or attacks me, I can get up quickly and leave, and I'm not fighting from the ground.
Right.
Or using like a partner, like we do have to go in close with patients to do a good assessment. Like you have to touch a patient to be able to take care of them. And so, there are times when that puts you in a situation where you can't get away that fast. So having your partner positioned in a way that's meaningful, having an egress plan when there's a level of R2, it's caution. And then we teach people of what signs are when the lights turned red, right? Because R2 is caution. It could go R3 at any point. That yellow light could go red at any time. And our behaviors on scene, our actions that we take and that we train are to prepare for that red light so that we can egress ahead of time. And all we're doing is training people to spot risk from the very point of dispatch and expand that timeline. And when I talk to folks that have experienced violence that give me that kind of like the patient suddenly hit me. And then I talk it out with them. I'm like, talk me through the call. What were the dispatch notes? And then you hear the patient was altered. They had a seizure, or something like that. And you're like, okay. Or maybe this address has a history of violence. You're like, okay, that's automatically a level 2 of risk.
Yeah.
It's R2, right? We already know that a patient could, and it doesn't mean that I treat them poorly. It actually means that I work a lot harder at building rapport and giving good early communication about what I'm doing. I'm like wanting to build a better relationship with the patient.
Yeah. Using those communication skills, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the things is like, I don't want to like call anybody out, but a lot of the like it suddenly happened was like preceded by someone being pretty rude or disrespectful to a patient, and things escalate. We have to think about what energy we bring to the call as well. So we do a lot of training on de-escalation, communication, building good relationships with patients, and stuff like that. So we don't even have to like get there in the first place.
Yeah, that's awesome. You were talking about unintentional violence.
Yeah.
I did have a call once, like early in my career, where it was a patient who had a seizure.
Yeah.
And came out of it like, I don't want to say swinging, but came out of it, pretty agitated and stuff. And we did have to end up like kind of pinning the patient down and getting the cops there and stuff. Once they kind of came to, they had no recollection of even doing that, right? So it's not like you're going into a situation where, you know, suddenly you walk into the door and this person's violent. It's like it could be something as simple as, you know, a routine seizure call,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, unintentional too,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's something to really be aware of for the people listening who, you know, are becoming first responders or who are already first responders. It's not black and white, right?
Yeah,
It's not like
absolutely.
you show up and it's like, you know, this guy has his, you know, his hands in a fist and he's swearing and yelling at you and, you know, moving towards you aggressively. Sometimes it's, you know, like you said, like someone who's, you know, potentially hypoglycemic
Yeah.
or whatever, right? So it's there's that gray area where there's so many factors involved that it's not just cut and dry, right? So
Yeah. And what's good about these systems is every altered patient that I see, I assume there's a R2 level of risk. I approach it with caution that the potential for violence exists. And we want to train responders to pick up on those cues and not be frightened, but be ready to respond to a situation and build in buffers and things that will help us reduce the chances of violence so we can take care of this patient better. I'm not here to vilify patients. Unintentional violence, man, if I had a seizure and, you know, I had all of these neurons depolarized, of course I'm going to be confused. And if I
yeah,
woke up on my floor and people were standing over me, I would probably fight them.
yeah,
Like
100%,
personally,
yeah. You'd be like, what the
100%.
hell's
I would
going
be
on
like
here?
swinging before I ask questions.
Yeah,
Like in my own house,
yeah,
of course I would, you know? And so like I'm not here to vilify like patients or any of this stuff. In fact, a lot of our patients, you know, have like a history of trauma that's really profound, and it influences how they perceive first responders, how they interact in these situations of extreme stress. And I want people to understand that better so we can build better relationships with patients and care for them better so we don't have to cross
you
that
don't have to
bridge.
get there.
That's the
Yeah,
whole point is like, yes, while I do teach some hands-on stuff for the purpose of escape, that's like defensively oriented, the vast majority of the course is how to spot the signs at the point of dispatch, when I'm walking up to the house, when I'm talking to this patient, looking for subtle cues so we have that ability to understand risk when it really exists. Because a lot of us, like you said, come into that routine call thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. See a lot of seizure patients, and then all of a sudden they're swinging and you're like, oh my goodness,
yeah,
right? But even then it's not usually all of a sudden. There's, you know, we'll see changes in muscle tension, changes in facial expression, changes in like breathing pattern, or how someone talks to us changes,
yeah.
and
Body
people
language, right?
yeah, so
Yeah,
we show people videos of real incidences, and break things down so people can actually start to like pick that up a bit earlier. And then my goal is for us to not have situations where someone goes, I was suddenly bang, this just happened.
yeah,
That we can help people, you know, get out of there before it happens,
yeah.
recognizing that it's not always preventable.
For sure, yeah. But just kind of having that awareness, right?
Hmm.
And being able to, you know, you're approaching the call or whatever, and being able to think, okay, like if this is an R2, okay, what are our exit points here? How are we gonna approach the patient? What's the room like, right?
Yeah.
Just having that, just that thought process going into the call is gonna make you so much better prepared if things do end up going south, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's like it's really approaching that with intentionality and not complacency. Because
Yeah,
we know complacency kills in any domain in first response.
yeah,
And approaching the scene and our ongoing assessment of violence is certainly one of those ones that will burn us pretty badly if we overlook those signs. And so we spend a lot of time teaching people what to look for. And again, we're not coming in there stressed out, freaked out, all this stuff. We're actually coming in calm. We train
yeah,
stress management before we train de-escalation in these courses, so that the energy I bring to the de-escalation is calm and composed, and I'm not actually inadvertently letting my fear and my stress escalate that other person. Now we're talking over each other more and more, and
yeah,
then it erodes to, you know, someone takes a swing.
yeah.
So the whole purpose is to give people tools to be able to get ahead of that curve, and cut it off.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Is it when you teach it, is it like a tiered system? Is it because you said you kind of teach like the stress mitigation and that kind of stuff, and then, you know, violence mitigation. Is it the courses that you teach, is it do you have to take say, you know, a de-escalation course before you take one of the other courses, or
No, so
is it a mix?
So the courses that the two main sort of prepackaged courses that we offer at Redpoint are Redpoint NTS, which is a performance-based non-technical skills training course for first responders. So that's communication, teamwork, situational awareness, decision making, stress management, and all that. And that's kind of oriented more at like your day-to-day making your technical skills better, like whether it's making a better at firefighting skills or medical skills or law enforcement or search and rescue or in hospital. That's like kind of one bucket of what we do at Redpoint. And the second course that we teach, that's like a prepackaged course, is our responding to violence course. And that's like another 1 day, 8 hours in person. And that's the full thing. It's taught progressively, starting with understanding patterns of violence, and going into understanding situational awareness. We talk about stress management, communication, de-escalation, and then we move into things like escape techniques, caring for the agitated patient. How do we safeguard someone who's actively violent and keep them safe, right? Like avoiding the prone position, how to pin somebody by their arms or legs so that we're not impeding their breathing in any way. What to look for and anticipate if they decline, right? And how to safeguard patients who are agitated and take better care of them. And then we run like scenarios and things like that based on it. And so it's really like the full spectrum and a complete approach to violence mitigation in a pre-hospital and then also an in-hospital setting. But we also do custom training. So I get agencies kind of approach us and they'll say, can you just teach us de-escalation? They'll say, yeah, can you just teach us de-escalation? For example, I have a team of hospital security professionals that I did a thing on situational awareness and assessing like pre-violent indications and body language and behaviors for risk assessment. I've had search and rescue crews be like, okay, we want an introduction to non-technical skills, or teach us decision making and critical thinking. And so I'll do custom work in any of those areas. So if someone's like, we want all day de-escalation course, I'll come in and do that. Or we want a leadership training course, I'll do that. So yeah.
Can Are you mostly teaching like groups within different agencies, or can say I wanted to take one of your courses, could I sign up for a course, or is it through basically are you approaching like the agencies to come
Yeah,
in and
it's prepackaged courses, or sorry, pre-scheduled courses. So typically those are scheduled by agencies. So I'll get like a search and rescue group or a hospital or a EHS group, or a fire crew will kind of approach us and be like, hey, can you run this course? If there was enough people interested, we could pre-schedule like a private session. Definitely there's lots of opportunities for that kind of stuff, but mostly like agency specific work.
Okay, awesome. So you're talking about leadership, teaching leadership skills and stuff like that. One thing I've found in the fire service is, when you're just a firefighter, you don't really make a lot of decisions. You work as directed, right?
Mhm.
And then eventually, you go into, depending on the department, you go into a leadership role of being a lieutenant or a captain, and you just spent the last, say, 15 to 20 years working as directed, and now you're expected to be in this leadership position. And I think it can be difficult, right? Like going from just being told what to do. You don't make any decisions without your officer or whatever, and you look to them for guidance, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you spent 15 years doing that, and now you're in that position of leadership. And I'm just curious, like, what advice you would have for, say, people who are going from firefighter to lieutenant, let's say, in the next couple of years in their career. What are some ways that they can develop some leadership skills on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many amazing ways to do that, and a lot of it starts with self-reflection and figure out what your leadership style is and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and being mindful about those and be honest, like do the hard stuff, do the things that you don't like to do, and lean into those gaps and weaknesses and try and improve them. Maybe you're not a strong communicator. Like identify that and go, hey, like, okay, I'm really good at these technical skills, but I'm not that good at like actually talking to the guys on the team, and how to clearly convey that and like actually like intentionally work on that.
Mhm.
Um, like actually like have an idea of like what are the areas that you could be a bit stronger on, your opportunities for improvement, and approach every shift and every day with the intentionality to work towards something. Like have some goals set around how you're going to convert those strengths or convert those opportunities of improvement into strengths, and be honest about it. I see a lot of people, whether they're like first responders or business leaders, that kind of shy away from areas that they're kind of weaker in because it makes you uncomfortable.
For
Nobody
sure.
likes to feel like they're
Yeah.
not good at something, but some of the best growth comes in from leaning into the discomfort,
Yeah.
right? So, it's don't avoid it, lean into it, figure it out, make goals around it, and then suddenly it's the thing that you're actually really good at.
Yeah.
And leadership doesn't always have to be from the front. Lead from where you are. So, if that's an aspiration that you have, start looking for ways to take on leadership from where you are. Maybe you're the experienced firefighter and there's some probationary folks on your crew. Well, what better opportunity for leadership than to start fostering the development of somebody else?
Yeah.
Right, that's the same kind of thing, and those skills will kind of help you move towards that stuff, and it's really important. But yeah, as like a newer person or someone that's not as comfortable with that, I would like also spend time like shadowing or mirroring someone, or if there's pick a mentor that you trust and be like, hey, why,
Yeah.
hey, LT, like I noticed you did this. Can you talk me through like how you came to that decision so that I can kind of understand better,
Yeah.
and start to like kind of understand the why and work towards that. But yeah, it's huge. Like there's just so many things.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I like what you said there about finding a mentor, like someone to look up to that, you like their leadership abilities and the way that they go about it, right? Like on the department that I'm with, there's, probably 4 or 5 people that I've worked with where I'm like, this person's an awesome leader. They're really good at their job, great communication. I love the way that they lead because they, like you said, like leadership doesn't always have to be from the front, right? Like
yeah,
they lead by example and stuff like that. And that's something that I've really tried to, emulate with, newer people coming on the job. I'm kind of in a level of seniority now where I get the opportunity to work with our probationary firefighters and that kind of stuff. And I'm not somebody I would say who was like a natural born leader. Some people are, right? Some
yeah,
people, they're good at it. I don't think I really was, but I think I've started to become that, and I still obviously have a lot to go.
yeah,
But I think that's huge. Yeah, just finding somebody that you really appreciate the way that they lead and how they condone themselves at work and stuff like that, and learn from them,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's huge. And then you can kind of start like compounding, like starting from that self-reflection, working with a mentor, get an idea of what that job is like, and what the not just technical skills, but also like the personal attributes, the behaviors, the mindset that is important for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And you said like, some people are born leaders and most people develop leadership, right? Just like stress management is a learned skill,
Yeah.
leadership is a learned skill as well. People look at people and they're like, oh, this person's just a strong natural leader. It's like that's most of the time not the case. And there are things that we can do to shape that. And there's just so many different looks that we can have at it. It's like, okay, cool. What makes that person that I look up to such an excellent leader at what they do,
Yeah.
and start to parse that out, and sit down, or talk to the captain or the lieutenant and be like, hey, what is it that you look for in these things, or how did you get here? And a lot of it comes down to like personal attributes that you
Yeah.
can develop, like accountability,
Hmm.
showing up, uh, being able to manage conflict on teams, to be able to support other people, to be able to manage your own authority.
Yeah.
Right? Authority gradients are a really um, tricky thing in the sense that like we kind of need them so that someone can lead us. But the steeper that gradient is, we stop getting communication two-way with teams. And that can be a threat to safety. And so, how are you going to manage the authority gradient with you and your team? How are you going to prioritize the tasks that come up? How are you going to pick the roles and distribute the roles and figure out like who's the best person, or how do I lead this person through this task? Yeah, there's a lot to it that you can develop. Learning about emotional intelligence, it's one of the most important things for a leader to have, and we never talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're leading people. Like, you're not leading tasks and processes. You're leading people to do the tasks and processes, but you got to understand how people tick.
Yeah.
And that's like what our Red Point non-technical skills training is about, is like, how do we understand like how and why humans perform the way they do?
Yeah.
And knowing what those attributes are, how do we help them be better at what they do and avoid errors?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, that's just something that we can keep like honing in on, like understand like, what things influence human behavior, my own behavior. Like, maybe I get really stressed under this situation, and start making a goal to regulate that. Or how do these relationships work together, and understand like how teams work, and actually start to do some reading on that kind of stuff. Like, go out on your own and be like, what makes an elite team?
Yeah.
How do I like start to build that stuff as a leader? How do I know that if I tapped anyone on my team on the shoulder and went, what is our main goal and how are we getting there on this call?
Yeah.
And have everyone have the same answer, right? That's building a shared mental model.
Right.
So at what points in the call are you sharing what the goal is and explaining how we're going to get there and what priorities are? And that's like, again, how a leader uses communication to build shared situational awareness across a team. And so there's just so many different things like that we can kind of hone in on.
The communication part is such a big part in leadership, I feel, because you see it all the time, in different agencies and stuff like that, where, you have someone who, say policing, for example, who's a sergeant, really good at their job, let's say, but not great at communicating with their team.
Yeah.
Or, they lean too much into that like authority figure and, you listen to me, you do what I say, right? I don't think you motivate people that way.
No.
And I think you can be really, really good at the technical part of your job, but if you don't have that, that ability to create that human connection, your delivery isn't gonna, it's gonna come across as, something that is probably going to do the opposite effect, of motivating people, right?
We actually have like really good evidence that how we communicate can influence like whether we're more prone to errors or not. Like, if I'm rude when I'm running a call, I say something kind of snarky or with like a little edge to my voice, that's telling everybody else that like I'm shutting them down. And now when I'm about to like step in it and make that big mistake that I overlooked or whatever, what are the chances are that team is going to feel comfortable speaking up and talking to me?
Yeah.
When the last time someone asked a question or something, I was kind of harsh with them or shut them down.
Yeah.
And so maybe an interaction I had with someone 2 weeks ago is going to change whether someone bails me out in an important moment.
Right.
And by it's in the how we communicate it, right? Like, communication isn't just the words we say, it's also the paraverbal, our tone, pitch, inflection, and our body language. There's some old studies from like 1967 that looked at like how much of how we interpret from the message in each category, and they looked at verbal, paraverbal, and body language, and they found that only like 7% of the message that we take in is from the specific words that get said.
Really?
38% is from the tone, pitch, inflection, and 55% is the body language. So 93% of what I'm communicating with another person is not the actual words that I'm saying, right? So if you look at, let's apply that to like leadership styles. So there's kind of like 3 leadership styles. There's like autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. Autocratic is like the leader makes all the decisions, no input from the team. Laissez-faire is all team, no leader, and democratic 50-50. And a lot of the times in really high acuity settings or high risk settings, we should be in an authoritative approach to leadership, that autocratic approach, which is leadership driven. Like you go here, like let's say you walk in the room and there's a cardiac arrest. It's like you start CPR, and we start like, giving out tasks. I can be autocratic and authoritative, but not be a dick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I can say it with the please and thank you that isn't wiggle room for like, hey, can you start CPR, please?
Yeah.
I'm not being a jerk. Or it's like, hey, can you grab the AED? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right. I'm still authoritative. That wasn't like, it wasn't like, hey, let's debate this. I'm still in authoritative position delegating a task, but I'm doing it nicely. And then when I'm about to step in it, and the relationship that I've had with my team, how I communicate them, not just on calls, but off calls. Let's say I miss something big and a crew member is like, hey, Sheena, are we going to do this? And I go, man, I totally forgot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like those are the moments that I show people who I am as a leader, or show them like the negative skills that I have. And
Right.
so it's like, well, no, I was going to get to it. We're not doing that. Or I stomp on somebody. And now the next time the entire team has learned it's not a good idea to raise concerns to Sheena.
Yeah.
And that's super dangerous.
Definitely don't want that.
Right? Like, let's say your captain has a plan that doesn't account for one of the risks that you see, but they don't.
Yeah.
If you don't have a relationship has some degree of psychological safety and an ability to communicate two ways, so it's not too steep an authority gradient, like you know that you can share information, you're not going to get stomped on, and they don't see it as a threat, then you're going to be able to step up and be like, hey, have we noticed, the smoke coming out of this side of the building? And it's like, oh, actually, I didn't realize that it had progressed into this room, or whatever. And now we can work as a team. But the moment I start to use like rudeness or like harsh or aggressive communication, that's when teamwork just obliterates.
Yeah, for sure. It's so true, right? Like if you're in that leadership position, you do have to delegate and make decisions, right? But like you said, like it really is about your approach to it, right? Like if you do walk into a cardiac arrest and you're like, hey, okay, do you mind just jumping on the chest? Let's start CPR. So and so, do you mind just setting up the AD? It's like you do need somebody to make those decisions and to delegate. And I think it's just the way that you go about it, right? And like you're saying, like you can go about it in a very team mentality way, or you can go about it in like a very authoritarian way, where it's like you do this, you do that. If somebody raises concerns, no, you listen to me, right? It's just in doing so that way, like you're not gonna get any respect from your team, and two, it's just a horrible way to lead. Right?
Absolutely. Like who we are as leaders is like our collective, like our actions and behaviors, like in totality. It's not like a lot of people look up and they're like, oh, those stripes on the shoulder, that's about 3 feet of gold thread. That's all that means.
Yeah.
Everything else about that position, that role, is what you make of it. And that's the actions. It's not your words. Like, I'm big on words to deeds ratios. Like, you got to make sure that the things that you're saying are the things you're doing as a leader.
Yeah.
And it's not the string on your shoulder, the couple extra feet of gold string or white string or whatever that makes the rank, whether it's, a sergeant or a captain or whatever the case may be. It's the actions of the person under that epaulet that dictate who you are. And people remember, for good or for bad, what that is. And it's not just that it decreases someone's enjoyment. One of the things about understanding human factors and non-technical skills is that impedes performance of a team.
Yeah.
And when we have that person who's, let's say I'm being a jerk one day or whatever, I just told that entire crew with my actions that I'm not going to be a safe leader for them.
Right.
So I've killed communication. When communication dies, teamwork dies, because that's one of the core facets of teamwork. When communication dies, coordination dies, cooperation dies. Now, teamwork falls apart, falls off the rails. Shared situational awareness falls off the rails. Now we start really making big holes in the Swiss cheese, and we're exposing ourselves to a lot of risk.
Right.
And it's being able to understand the social, individual, and cognitive elements that help you perform or degrade the performance. And that's one of the things that we really focus on at Redpoint is those in quote unquote intangibles. We help make them tangible for folks.
Yeah.
And go, when you were rude to this person on this call, this has a downstream correlation to performance on a call. And we talk about all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I said, like what you're doing it's so huge, and you're really providing this opportunity for people to just develop not only their leadership skills and decision making abilities, but just develop their own safety in certain situations. And I really appreciate what you're doing, and I know a lot of first responders out there will benefit a lot from this podcast episode. If you post a lot of great content on your Instagram, would you mind just sharing it for our listeners so they can follow you?
Yeah, it's just at Redpoint Safety, or you can search Redpoint Performance and Safety, and that'll come up. So yeah, I'm not great at social. Like it's something, speaking of working on things that you're not that good or comfortable with, it's certainly outside of my comfort zone doing like videos and things. I'd much rather be in a classroom or on a call, but I do try to share like content to help get some of these important concepts out to first responders and healthcare providers for free, and try and just spread the information so that we can help teams be safer and stronger and do what they do.
Awesome. If an agency wants to reach out to you and get you to put on a course, like we've had different chiefs on here from volunteer departments and stuff like that, especially with these work experience departments, it would be such a huge benefit to be able to have you put on a course for them, because these aren't full-time first responders where it's very like hit and miss on the calls that they're going to. But if an agency wanted to hire you to put on a course, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can go to our website, redpointsafety.com. And there's like a contact us page. You can email info@redpointsafety.com or Sheena@redpointsafety.com.
Perfect.
So we have just created our Patreon program, and it's online. We'll put a link in the description of this episode. It's got all our freebies on there. So it's got resume templates, the interview checklist,
the competitive edge checklist.
Yeah, competitive edge checklist.
And we're also going to be diving into more in-depth interview episodes and hiring process stuff, and we're going to be posting it on there. It really does help us out, because then we're able to pay Francesco for producing this podcast. If it wasn't for him, we'd be hooped.
You guys missed the part where we were just trying to turn this microphone on before this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we wouldn't be anywhere without him, so we'd like to start paying him a lot more.
And it's also going to be a way for us to just upgrade to better audio equipment, better cameras, better lighting, and all that kind of stuff to bring you guys a better experience with this podcast.
Yeah, and that was your idea, actually, with the whole going over every interview question kind of in depth and really getting into the interview panel stuff.
Yeah, we'll be going into that in really great detail, really breaking apart the questions and just talking about like what they're actually asking in these questions, right? And yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a lot of info, a lot of really, really good info.
And if it's not, let us know. We also have a chat group in there as well on Patreon.
That's right.
So if there's, guests you want us to see, bring on, or if there's questions you want us to ask or talk about on the podcast, you're more than welcome to ask us on there.
Yeah, for sure. And like when it comes to those behavioral / situational type questions, we can break down a question and talk about it for probably half an hour. Yeah. Right. Just one question.
Easily.
So there's going to be a lot of really good info on that. And like we said, it's going to really help support the podcast so we can upgrade better equipment and also keep Francesco around so that way there is a podcast.
Chaining him down to the table would be too cruel.
Yeah. Right on. Sheena, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen.
Oh, this is awesome.
Tons of amazing information in this episode, and it's really going to help out a lot of people. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you.